You can find our preliminary statement and press release, an official printed copy, on your way.
First, I would like to express my appreciation to the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, for inviting the European Union to observe these important elections. And I'd also like to express my gratitude to federal and state institutions, judiciary, civil society, media, and of course political participants for their continuous cooperation during the course of our observation mission. The mission started its work on the 11th of January and observed all stages of the electoral processes up to date. Our observers are still at state collation offices following the results process as we speak. For the 18th March elections, the mission deployed almost 70 international observers in 20 states across Nigeria. The mission was comprised of observers from 25 EU member states and from our colleagues in Norway and Switzerland. In this regard, I would like to thank the delegation of the European Union. In Nigeria, the embassies of the EU member states who are represented here today, and the embassies of Norway and Switzerland, who enforced our mission with locally recruited short-term observers. Ladies and gentlemen, throughout the mission we saw that Nigerians have a great appetite for democracy and are keen to engage in various civic activities. However, in large parts of the country, their expectations were not met. Further, many Nigerians were so disappointed with the electoral process of the 25th of February that on Saturday they decided to stay at home. The voter apathy that we witnessed is, in part, a clear consequence of failures by political elites and unfortunately also by INEC. We all remember how public confidence and trust in INEC collapsed on the 25th of February, primarily due to lack of transparency and operational failures in the conduct of the federal level polls. Up until the postponement of the state elections, INEC limited its communication to a few press releases and ceremonial statements. And these were insufficient to address public grievances and rebuild public confidence. Positively, however, from the 11th of March onwards, INEC introduced various corrective measures, and on Saturday we saw that some of those steps had taken effect. For example, sensitive materials were delivered on time, and the use of election technologies was improved. Nevertheless, polling on election day was again disrupted by multiple incidents of thuggery, intimidation of voters, polling officials, observers, and journalists, and this occurred in most of the states. Lagos and Kano, as well as other states across the southern and central areas, were most affected. Unfortunately, there were also many casualties and indeed fatalities. This is worrying, as the killing of even one citizen during the conduct of an election is one too many. Our observers noted that most polling units opened on time, with materials present and election officials ready to serve the voter. However, there was less pressure on INEC operations throughout the day, owing to a dismal level of voter participation. Vote buying, also directly observed by EU EOM observers, further detracted from an appropriate conduct of the election in many places. The use of election technology was more efficient this time around. By midday yesterday, gubernatorial race results forms available online range from 62 to 97%, depending on the state. A notable change if compared to the 25th of February election, when more than a quarter of presidential result forms were still missing at the declaration of the results on the 1st of March. Some 11,000 candidates competed in the state elections, among whom only a bare 10% were women. Notably, lead political parties fielded only 2 female candidates for highly prized governor seats. It demonstrates a clear underrepresentation of women in political life. Most importantly, it also shows the lack of internal party policies to support and promote inclusion of women. And let me also remind you that it is almost 40 years since Nigeria signed up to the United Nations Convention on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women, and in so doing committed to eradicate discrimination against women in political life. Before I share our assessment of the campaign environment, let me stress that intra-party conflicts compounded by protracted deadlines for candidacy disputes created wholesale uncertainty for voters and electoral contestants alike. We observed that some court decisions about the electoral contestants were taken only a few days before the poll. Such timelines effectively reduce candidates' prospects to meaningfully campaign. Overall, campaigns in the state elections were highly competitive. Fundamental freedoms of assembly and movement were largely respected. However, the latter was impeded in some states by insecurity and executive actions. Further, organized violent attacks shortly before the polls led to a fearful atmosphere in some parts of the country. The campaign also saw many defections and individual switching supports from one party to another. Our observers noted that in several states, the abuse of incumbency gave an undue advantage to the party in power and limited the free expression of the will of the voter. Positively, voters in 15 out of 28 states benefited from professionally organized media debates, during which journalists questioned lead gubernatorial candidates on issues of local concern, while the fact-checkers probed their responses for accuracy. It helped voters to make a better informed choice on election day, even if most incumbents rebuffed media offers. Unfortunately, attacks and harassment of journalists that occurred on the 25th of February went unprosecuted. I would hope that those who assault journalists, as well as those who perpetrated such attacks during this Saturday's polls, will be brought to justice. Our social media monitoring shows that gubernatorial candidates' online communication was focused on issues, a positive change from the presidential contest. However, disinformation contaminated online information space and aimed to confuse voters. We also recorded some dangerous rhetoric seeking to sow ethnic division. Positively, fact-checking initiatives continue to debunk such content and strive to preserve the integrity of the online space. Last but not least, I would like to commend the efforts of civil society organizations. Between the elections, national observer groups raised awareness and provided important electoral information to voters. Their leadership actively participated in online and offline discussions, calling for greater transparency and accountability of INEC ahead of the state elections. As I mentioned earlier, the collation process is still ongoing, and the EU Election Observation Mission is continuing its observation of this crucial phase of the election. Therefore, I encourage stakeholders to keep committed to a peaceful process and address any grievances through the courts. In this regard, I am mindful of the fact that various aspects of the presidential election have already been brought before the courts. I understand that petitions may also be submitted regarding several Senate and House of Representatives elections. That being said, it is important that this mission maintains its strict line of impartiality and non-interference in accordance with our observation methodology. Accordingly, I do not propose to discuss matters related to those elections, as they are now likely to be sub judice. This is to avoid saying anything that might be construed as to prejudice the interests of any party in those petitions. As observers, we always hope to see a frictionless electoral process, to see democracy striving. Unfortunately, wide expectations that the new electoral law, in particular, would notably improve the overall conduct of the polls were not met, due in part to the poor implementation of the law and lack of political will to achieve its objectives. The conduct of the 2023 elections revealed systemic weaknesses of election administration that, if not properly and comprehensively addressed, could lead to democratic backsliding. This can have costly consequences for any country on any continent. Considering the pivotal role Nigeria has for this region, for Africa and the world, this is particularly important at this time. And thank you very much for your attention, and back to Alex.
Thank you very much, Chief Observer. So now we are opening the floor for questions from...
I think it's important at this point to draw a distinction between this mission and the European Union delegation. So we do represent the European Union together, but we are two separate entities. So the European Union mission is here since early January, and our core team, some of whom you see here this afternoon, will be here until late April the 11th, and we will complete our reporting process within 3 months after today. And we will provide a final report with conclusions and recommendations. What you were describing in terms of EU investment in the democratic and governance process here in Nigeria is outside of our mandate. Nevertheless, it is important for us to be impactful and that the work we do is useful for Nigerians in particular. And in our engagement with political participants, but also especially with CSOs, civil society organizations, we have been reminded that the European Union's reports arising from these electoral processes have value and meaning. And we also carried out a follow-up mission from the last presidential elections in 2019, just a year ago, and we were able to identify progress that was made against some of the recommendations from 2019. So naturally there is some disappointment about the events over the last 3 or 4 weeks, but we will commit fully. This is why we have such a team of experts, why we're here for the long haul, why we've been here throughout the process, not just for election days itself, because we are committed to Nigerian democracy on behalf of the people of Nigeria. In relation to the infractions that you mentioned, again, I'm sorry to say that it's outside of our mandate to talk about the way in which investigations should take place or prosecutions should follow, indeed convictions. These are a matter for the criminal authorities. And as I mentioned before, we would encourage anybody with a grievance or who has evidence in relation to a grievance to share that with the appropriate legal authorities and to pursue those grievances in the appropriate legal channels. Thank you. I would like to draw attention to this fact. It's far more than a detail. It's absolutely tragic that 21 people, according to our latest information, lost their lives in election-related violence, and that's really unacceptable. And we want to pass our condolences to the families of those who lost their lives. And again, I would emphasize that if anybody has information relating to these incidents, that they should share it with appropriate legal authorities. And by any standards, when this kind of activity happens in the context of an election, it is almost inevitable that it has the effect of suppressing voter participation. And unfortunately, that is something that was very clearly seen on Saturday, where the high level of violence unfortunately had that effect. And these are standards of voter participation that are central to Nigeria's commitments in its own legislation and the international covenants that it's already signed up to. So we are saddened to share that information with you, but unfortunately that is the reality.
Thank you so much. Next question.
Thank you for that question. I would say, I think we all know that it falls to INEC and INEC only to declare the results of the elections that took place on Saturday, and I am aware, we have taken note of the fact that in some individual states that there are ongoing issues and that INEC has made particular findings about that, and we will continue to monitor that process. As I mentioned to you in my opening remarks, we have long-term observers still in the field, in some cases still in collation centres where results have not yet been announced. And we've also taken note of the fact that there has been problems with the VIVAS, the operation of VIVAS in some areas. But again, it's too soon to draw any conclusions about the pattern in this regard. We will have to wait until such time as we are in a position to issue a final report on that. Your other question, Thomas? Oh yes, I beg your pardon, yeah. So the question was about the comparison with the presidential elections. And as I mentioned before, there was an improvement in the operation of the technology. We saw not only the operation of the technology, but the overall functioning of the election from the opening of the polling units. Most of our observers noted that the polling units opened on time. Most of them observed that the rules were observed faithfully. But there were some issues, particularly around the secrecy of the casting of ballots, noted by many of our observers in polling units across the states. And this is an area, obviously, for improvement. But the most notable improvement was in the operation of the results viewing platform, where the promise of real-time opportunity to see the uploading of results was fulfilled in most cases. So there certainly was an improvement, but I would also add that there was a much lower turnout, which put less pressure on the electoral infrastructure that was operated on Saturday compared to the presidential. The election observation mission follows a very specific methodology, and this is the 7th election since the restoration of democracy in 1999 that the European Union has covered. And you're right to say that there has been widespread evidence of thuggery and of intimidation and political violence during the course of the elections that took place on Saturday. This doesn't in any way undermine our commitment as a mission to deepening the roots of democracy in Africa. We'll never turn our back on that mission. And we are honoured to be here to, at the invitation of INEC, with the cooperation of all of the authorities, and with the enthusiasm, by the way, of civil society and political participants. We will never turn our back on that mission. We take that very seriously. I did refer in my opening comments to the danger of democratic backsliding, and I think that is something that all of us want to avoid seeing happening. But if we were to simply pull up our tent and walk away, I think that's not something anybody would like to see us do. So we are committed for this, not only for this mission, but for the future, and we will continue to work towards those aims. It is important to emphasize the positives. We're not here to just identify negatives. And I would also like to say that when we do provide criticism, I think it's accepted by all parties as in the spirit in which it's given, which is constructive in every possible way. However, those positives we identified in my opening remarks. I think the technology worked better. I think that there was much better focus on issues as opposed to party disputes, which was a characteristic of the presidential election that we drew attention to. We think that the social media debate was well moderated in terms of trying to identify disinformation and fact-checking. And there was, we thought, movement and assembly of candidates was, broadly speaking, very positive, and we want to draw attention to that. It's really important that we emphasize those things. But nevertheless, we don't want to simply sugarcoat some other difficult truths, because we wouldn't be doing ourselves justice, and certainly we wouldn't be doing justice to the people in Nigeria who have such a very obvious appetite for democracy in this country.
Good afternoon.
Point attention to that comment at the end of my speech, and it is a worry, and it's, by the way, it's unfortunately something that's happening across the world. So we have to take this very seriously. All of those of us who are dedicated to democracy and are complacent about it, it's important that we identify shortcomings when they happen and have honest and robust conversations about it when we fall short of the standards that we set ourselves. And we will make conclusions and recommendations in due course. But I don't want to avoid your question. I think it's important that I remind you that when we do these missions, we try to test the process against the criteria that are internationally accepted, particularly inclusivity and transparency. And unfortunately, some of the technology, particularly the presidential, was not adequate to its intentions and objectives, and this continued our work over the next few months before we conclude with the final report. Thank you.
Thanks for checking out SYMFONI on YouTube. Please be sure to subscribe and like our videos for updates.